Hello and welcome. I am Pranay Upadhyay and you are watching Namaste World, your daily window into the biggest stories shaping India and the world. We begin in the United States. President Donald Trump's Taiwan deal brings $250 billion investments plus $250 billion credit as US chip push raises China tensions. In the Russia-Ukraine conflict, Kiev admits massive troop desertions as young Defense Minister Mikhailo Fedorov turns to drone to save war effort. Back in United States, President Donald Trump seems to be moving away from rule-based order in favor of open neocolonialism. But the biggest news of the day, Venezuelan Nobel winner presents medal to Trump in historic White House gesture. However, prize rule stays unchanged. All that and more. Global flashpoints, power plays and the stories that matter coming up in this edition of Namaste World. In a striking and unprecedented gesture, Venezuelan opposition leader Maria Corina Machado, the 2025 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, has presented her Nobel medal to US President Donald Trump during a White House meeting. Machado handed over the prestigious award, describing it as recognition of Trump's unique commitment to the freedom of Venezuelan people. President Trump accepted the medal with a wide smile, calling it a wonderful gesture of mutual respect, and later posted on social media, "Maria presented me her Nobel Peace Prize for the work I have done. Thank you, Maria." Unquote. This marks the first time in history that a Nobel laureate has voluntarily handed over their medal. However, the Norwegian Nobel Institute has made it clear, once awarded, the Nobel Peace Prize cannot be revoked, shared or transferred. The decision is final and stands for all time. The symbolic act of Maria comes amid ongoing discussion about Venezuela's political future following the ousting of former President Nicolas Maduro. The United States has unveiled a major trade deal with Taiwan that cuts tariffs and pulls billions of dollars into America's tech sector. But as Washington deepens economic ties with the island, Beijing is pushing back hard. Is this smart trade policy or strategic confrontation with China? Here is a report by Jyoti Shukla.
US President Donald Trump has just pulled off one of the boldest geopolitical trade moves of his presidency, and it's sending shockwaves far beyond Washington. The United States and Taiwan have clinched a high-stakes trade deal that slashes tariffs, unlocks massive investments, and turbocharges America's semiconductor ambitions. But behind the number lies a far bigger question. Will this deal escalate tensions with China? Under the agreement, tariffs on Taiwanese goods will drop from 20% to 15%, putting Taiwan on par with key US partners like Japan and South Korea. In exchange, Taiwanese companies will invest a staggering $250 billion into the US technology sector, focusing on semiconductors, artificial intelligence, and energy. But there's also a hard warning behind the deal. In an interview, US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick made it clear that Taiwanese companies which do not build manufacturing facilities in the United States could face potential tariffs as high as 100%. The message is blunt: bring production to America or pay a heavy price. This deal comes as Washington grows increasingly uneasy about its reliance on overseas chip makers, especially at a time when China is intensifying pressure on Taiwan. The Commerce Department has described the agreement as historic, saying it will drive a massive reshoring of America's semiconductor industry through new, world-class industrial parks across the United States. Companies that invest locally will be rewarded with tariff exemptions and preferential trade treatment. Certain Taiwanese imports, including generic pharmaceuticals and aircraft components, will also be exempted altogether. Taiwan's government is calling the deal a win-win. Officials say the so-called Taiwan model will strengthen global competitiveness while deepening strategic cooperation with the United States. The $250 billion investment includes $100 billion already committed by chip giant TSMC, with more expected in the coming years. Taiwan will also guarantee an additional $250 billion in credit to accelerate further investments. But Beijing is furious. China, which claims Taiwan as its own territory, has slammed the agreement as economic exploitation by Washington. The timing could not be more sensitive, with China ramping up military drills and diplomatic pressure around the island. The US may not formally recognize Taiwan as a sovereign nation, but this deal sends a powerful signal. It tightens economic ties, secures critical technologies, and challenges China's dominance without firing a single shot. So, is this just trade, or is it strategy disguised as economics? One thing is certain: Beijing is watching closely, and the fallout may only be the beginning. With Jyoti Shukla, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
Ukraine has made a stunning admission that exposes the human cost of its long war with Russia. 200,000 soldiers have deserted, and millions more are refusing to fight. As Kiev turns to technology over manpower, can drones really replace soldiers on the battlefield? Here is a report by Srijita Sen Majumdar.
Ukraine just dropped a bombshell that nobody saw coming. The country's brand new defense minister stood up in parliament and admitted something shocking. 200,000 Ukrainian soldiers have simply walked away from their posts. Gone. Without permission, without looking back. So who's the guy making these stunning revelations? Meet Mikhailo Fedorov. He's only 34 years old, about to turn 35 next week, and he's just become Ukraine's youngest defense minister ever. Before this, Fedorov was Ukraine's tech wizard, the guy behind their deadly drone warfare program. Now he's taking charge of the entire military at one of the most critical moments in the war. And here's the brutal reality he's inheriting. Ukrainian soldiers are exhausted. They are outmanned, they are outgunned, they have been holding the line against Russia for years now. And the conditions on the front line, absolutely brutal. Under Ukrainian law, every man between 18 and 60 has to register for military service. But tens of thousands have fled anyway, illegally crossing borders, desperate to escape. This is the first time any Ukrainian official has admitted just how bad the desertion problem really is. For months, there have been whispers, rumors about low morale, and soldiers abandoning their positions. Now we have numbers, and they are staggering. So what's Fedorov's plan? He's betting big on drones, robots, and AI-powered warfare. His philosophy is simple. More robots mean fewer human casualties. More technology means fewer deaths. And Ukraine's already making serious progress. There are now 500 companies building drones, 200 making jamming equipment, and over 20 producing missiles. All privately owned, all Ukrainian. President Volodymyr Zelensky backed him up, saying Ukraine needs broader changes to how they mobilize troops. But here's the question nobody's asking out loud. If 200,000 soldiers have already walked away and 2 million more are refusing to serve, what does that say about the state of this war? Ukraine's fighting for survival, but the people doing the fighting, they are running out of will, running out of hope, and in many cases, just running out of the country. This is the crisis Fedorov has to solve, and he's got to do it fast. With Srijita Sen Majumdar, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As world may be entering a far more dangerous phase of global politics. After the US operation in Venezuela, President Donald Trump continues to openly talk about power, territory, and control. Is America abandoning global rules and embracing open imperialism once again? Here is a report by Farhan Khan.
The world may have entered a new and unsettling phase of global politics. At the start of 2026, the United States carried out a dramatic operation in Venezuela, abducting President Nicolas Maduro and declaring effective control over the country. For Donald Trump, this was not just a military success, it was a statement. Trump openly claimed Washington was now in charge of Venezuela and hinted that US companies would soon tap into its vast oil reserves. This was no routine regime change operation dressed up in democratic language. Trump made it explicit. Power, force, and resources are back at the center of American foreign policy. Emboldened by the operation, Trump warned that other countries could face similar action. Cuba, he said, was ready to fall. Colombia's leadership was described as expendable. Even Greenland, a semi-autonomous territory for Denmark, a NATO ally, was once again placed in Trump's sights, framed as a matter of US national security.
We're talking about acquiring, not leasing, not having it short term. We're talking about acquiring. And if we don't do it, Russia or China will, and that's not going to happen when I'm president.
What makes this moment different is not American intervention itself, but the rhetoric. The US has invaded or destabilized countries for decades. But for the first time since the Second World War, Washington is openly embracing imperial language. The Trump administration has revived the Monroe Doctrine, a 19th century idea originally meant to block European colonialism in the Americas. Under Trump, it has been reinterpreted as license for US dominance across the Western Hemisphere. His aides have been blunt. Stephen Miller, the White House's chief ideologue, argues the West should stop apologizing for imperialism and reclaim power without moral hesitation. This places the US alongside Russia and China in a new age of open empire building. Vladimir Putin seeks to restore Russia's historical reach at enormous human cost in Ukraine. Xi Jinping frames China's ambitions from the South China Sea to Taiwan as part of a great national rejuvenation. Trump's vision fits nearly into this pattern. His historical inspiration is telling.
This is unprovoked aggression by the United States. It is the product of a decision by the Trump administration to go beyond the original Monroe Doctrine and exercise a sort of tyranny over the Western Hemisphere, in which the only sovereignty that counts is that of the United States. The war was unconstitutional. The Congress defaulted on its responsibility to authorize the use of force against another nation. It was illegal, therefore, under American law. But more important, it was a violation of many, many elements of international law, and particularly the seizure of the sovereign, the chief of state and government, the president, Maduro.
Trump frequently praises William McKinley, the US president who oversaw America's first wave of overseas expansion in the late 19th century, when Washington seized territories from Cuba to the Philippines. In Trump worldview, making America great again requires reclaiming influence, land, and resources allegedly lost to rivals. Some scholars argue this is not a new empire, but the removal of hypocrisy.
I think we are entering a period of global fragmentation. We are certainly entering a period when American hegemony is in relative decline. And I think that Donald Trump, by the way, is a manifestation. It's the extinction burst of American hegemony, of the unipolar moment.
The US never truly abandoned its imperial footprint. It still controls overseas territories and operates hundreds of military bases worldwide. What has changed is the presence of a rules-based international order. The danger lies ahead. While Trump appears comfortable with Russia and China carving out their own spheres of influence, history suggests such arrangements are unstable. The real victims are likely to be smaller states caught between competing powers. Domestically, Trump may also see foreign adventures as politically useful. Quick military victories that distract from economic pressures and scandals at home. In this emerging Trump doctrine, one principle stands out clearly: might makes right. Neocolonialism is no longer implied. It is being declared, unapologetically, from the White House. With Farhan Khan, Bureau Report, India Today Global.
As we wrap up today's show, here's a quick look at the top stories making waves around the world. Thousands were stranded in Tokyo after a power outage halted major commuter train lines following a trackside fire. Residents surveyed destruction in Gaza Deir al-Balah after Israeli strikes killed at least 10 people, including senior militant figures. A Greek court clears 24 international aid workers of smuggling charges, ending a long trial critics called an attack on refugee rescue. And this brings us to the end of today's edition of Namaste World. From breakthrough in technology and business to political developments and natural disasters. Stay tuned as we bring you the latest updates, key developments, and more from New Delhi to New York. See you again tomorrow, same time, right here on Namaste World.